Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dental Momentum Podcast powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with my business partner, Bill Ladd. And Bill, we're going to kind of continue the one before, right? We're going to do a part two of basically the 10 things, let's say, the 10 thoughts or the 10 really things that we have implemented in the past 5 years that we have seen have had the greatest impact on our business. And like we said, we're talking specifically to dental practice owners out there. But like I said in the first episode, and if you haven't heard the first one, probably stop right now, if you will, and just go back and watch the first one first, because it's going to all kind of leads in. These are kind of, chronologically, I guess, or put in place as kind of a journey evolves, if you will, in your business. But really what I want to do is I want to just kind of recap the first five. And Bill, chime in here if you've got anything to add on these. And then we're just going to kind of build on those five, where we're at. And again, this has had the greatest impact on our business. But I mean, like we said in the first episode, Bill, this translates to really any business. I mean, it's not specific to dental practice owners, but I mean, we see where it can easily fit into dental practice owners' businesses.
Yeah, it's really hard because you could come up with 20 of these things probably. We tried to narrow it down to 10 things that we felt were most impactful that really encompassed a lot of concepts. And you're 100% right. I could look at, we do a lot with dentists. So yes, absolutely a dental practice owner, but really any type of small business. I think these are things that can make a huge difference. But they're things that sometimes are not rocket science, they're common sense. And other times they're things that are not easy. They have to kind of be dug out, and you have to spend time and really be deliberate about them. But if you can kind of put these on the forefront as you're heading into that new year, we've had a rough year. I mean, timestamp this thing 2020, now's a good time to look back and maybe start looking forward to 2021. Maybe it's finding some of these 10 that you think can have the biggest impact and trying to put them to work.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, you said something there that I'll elaborate on is sometimes some of the most simple concepts, because again, some of these are going to sound very simple, but sometimes some of the most simple concepts are the ones that you're not implementing and can have the greatest impact.
Well, for sure. And I mean, it's easy to kind of gloss over those, but a lot of times the simplest things are the easiest ones for people to understand and get behind too. Why they're the hardest to implement, it's hard to say, Jared. I think it all comes down, we all get busy and we all get tied up. And like we said in the first episode, that was the first 10 years of our career is just grinding and going. It would be the equivalent of a dentist being chained to his desk, right? I mean, that's what we were. We were chained to our desk as very traditional accountants. The first five were really interesting, Jared, because they were kind of foundational. I think they were really more, this is stuff that any business owner really needs to understand these concepts. If you look at the Simon Sinek golden circle, which I love, those are really, a lot of those are more tied in with that why, the why and the how, some of the really, cerebral things that dentists need to wrap their heads around. And it's hard to do sometimes because we think we have a job, but just having recently worked through a mission and core values exercise with one of our clients, it is huge. Not doing those kind of things is huge. So with all that being said, I don't want to jump too far ahead. I know you're going to recap them out, so I'll let you jump in and do that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And two things, and then we will get into it here, but two things is these, I mean, really the first five for sure. And a lot of these to a degree, they are foundational principles.
For sure.
And like I said, they're going to sound common sense to a degree, but you hit on it. I think the reason I wouldn't say nobody, let me take that back. The reason a lot of businesses maybe don't implement this is sit down. It's like you said, they're in a rat race. They're just running like chickens with their heads cut off. And so in order to do this, and again, if you're listening out there right now and thinking, taking notes or whatever, going to come back and re-listen, is the only way you're going to implement these in your business is to slow down and be deliberate and set aside time to do it. Because if you're in the rat race and you're running like a chicken with your head cut off, these things aren't going to happen unless you slow down and be deliberate in order to get them done. So the first five, and again, they kind of grow on each other, if you will. but these are basically the foundation. So number one is that growth mindset. We talked about how EntreLeadership was huge for us. It flipped our mindset of how you have to constantly be learning, growing, trying to get better as a person, as a business owner, but then also in your business as well.
This is the first stepping stone. If you don't have this, there's really no reason to listen to the rest of this podcast, and for 10 years, we didn't have this, and it stagnated our growth. We did okay, but we didn't do what we could do, and we didn't have the impact, and we didn't have the level of satisfaction we got now. You can't do any of the rest of these without having a growth mindset and be willing to push yourself, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if you are listening to this podcast, then you probably are having that growth mindset, because this is part of it. Books, podcasts, education, surrounding yourself by others that are trying to grow, etc. Number two is the mission. And again, you hit on it, the Simon Sinek why. That mission, every business has to have a mission. Why do you do what you do? Sounds very simple, right? A lot of businesses, and like you said, we've helped some of our dental clients with this, find out what their mission is, their core values. Very, very foundational. Number three is core values too, so we can kind of put that in there. You have to have these in place. This is the foundation of your business. Right. Again, it's not going to happen unless you be deliberate about it.
See, this is something, Jared, that when we kind of talk about the dental journey, it doesn't matter where you are in the dental journey. If this isn't set, you have to go back and get this dialed in our opinion. We've helped people do this who, are new business owners, all the way up to people, who are towards the tail end of their career and are frustrated. I mean, it's never too late. It was not too late for us. We spent 10 years not understanding this. But if you can just spend a little time, and man, what a great time to do it now, end of the year. It's been a rough one. Time to reflect and look forward. These are the kind of things that you can really sit down, think through, work through, and see if you can't put them into place for the new year, and see what happens. See if that doesn't set you on a different trajectory.
Yeah, you said something there that was really cool that just resonated with me is the first three here, the growth mindset, mission, core values. Even if you're not a dental practice owner right now,
right?
Let's say you're in dental school, D3, D4, whatever, or maybe outside of dental school and an associate at an existing practice, etc. You can be thinking about these. First off, you can have a growth mindset. Anybody at any age can have a growth mindset, but you can start thinking about that day when you are going to buy your practice or do a scratch start.
Yep.
What's my mission? Why do you do what you do? Why are you in dental school right now? But then also, what are those core values that you want to instill in your business? That you want all the team members to have those core values. You can be thinking about that right now.
For sure. And that's one of the things that may be one of the most impactful things you can do, because you want to start building the practice that you want and deserve from scratch. Man, that's the time to do it. And guys, not to say that those things won't evolve. Typically, your why is going to be your North Star. That's going to stay put. If it's the right one that inspires yourself, inspires others, that's going to probably be stationary. But those core values, those may evolve over time. But start thinking about those. Start thinking through. That may be a podcast we need to do, is kind of walk through an exercise that we think would help people discover those core values, Jared, because they're important and they can really help people start building the foundations of that practice they deserve. And that's why we love helping people with these conversations.
Yeah. And by doing that now, before you buy a practice or start a practice, you know how much of a head start you're going to have.
For sure.
So I think we just created another podcast episode right there. But so number four, the vision. So this is, where are you going as a business? The mission is, why do you do what you do? The vision is, where are you going? And communicating that to the team. And again, going back, and that's kind of what these two podcast episodes are about here, is we're talking about before Duckett Lad and really after Duckett Lad. Is before we started Duckett Lad, we didn't really know where we're going, because we were, you said it, chained to the chair, just working. Point A, point B, we were just at point A, just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
So the last one, let's say A+ team players, A+ team members. You've got the best team in the world, and that's everything. Your team is everything. I would say the greatest asset of any business is the team members, because it makes the whole business churn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I've actually heard that twisted on its head to say, your team isn't your biggest asset. The right team is your biggest asset.
Ooh, that's
I
even
often
better.
say that people can be the best or worst part of your job. And for a lot of times we've had parts of it that if we could crawl under our desk and never come out and have to deal with some of this stuff, we would love it. And then other times, we have celebrations with our team for hitting goals, even in tough stretches, that bond you together and create this kind of band of brothers mentality. Getting that right team, getting them dialed into your vision, in align with your core values, doing it all for your mission. And my goodness, that's a very, very powerful combination. It's going to make you hard to stop, hard to beat.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we said, if you've gotten to this point and you haven't listened to that first episode, go back, listen to that now. Because right now we're going to dive into the next 5 or the final 5, if you will. And I'm going to kind of go through them. Bill, help me unpack these, and we'll kind of talk, specific to dental practice owners and how this looks in their practice. Again, this goes to all businesses. But let's say 6, all right, on this 10 deal. Number 6, it's basically creating, and Bill, you say this all the time, creating that magnetic business and brand. And so if you could unpack what you mean by that, Bill, if somebody's like, what do you mean that magnetic business and brand? What does that mean?
This is one of the concepts that was introduced to us pretty early on in our 5-year evolution. And that's that once you know why you exist, once you have core values dialed in, what that allows you to do is create belief statements. This is what we believe. And you know what? Not everybody's going to believe the same things, and that's fine. It's not for you. We believe you need a partner, not an accountant, something like that. So that's one of our early iterations of one of our belief statements. So early on, we were challenged that if you know your mission, your core values, and what you stand for, what you believe, the goal is to work with people who believe what you believe, and and that's team members, but also work with clients, in our case, who see the world the same way and believe what you believe. It's like Simon Sinek said, the goal is not to work with people who want what you have, it's who believe what you believe. In the past, I don't think that was really a thought process. I think we had a scarcity mentality that we would take whatever came through the door. And what we've realized, that's what leads to frustration and dissatisfaction on both sides. If people don't see the same world, the world the same way, if your expectations are not aligned, if how you do business is not what they want, it's not going to be a good experience. And you're both going to be frustrated. And it's really going to be more of a setback. So we've kind of looked at it now. Our goal is to create a brand that is almost has a personality, right? If you and I were to hang out with Duckett Ladd as a person, I think we'd have a good time. We'd grab beer and have fun, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal is to create a brand that is magnetic, that speaks to the right people. And I think this is an important concept, is it serves as a magnet, draws in the right people, but just as importantly, it's going to kind of repulse the wrong people. So that's how I kind of look at that magnetic brand.
Yeah, once you were saying that, it kind of brought me up. And in the first episode, we talked about entree leadership, right? And how that shifted our growth mindset. But I'll never forget the first entree leadership summit we went to. And one of my biggest takeaways, as well as the growth mindset, but Dave Ramsey's organization, everybody at this summit that was working for entree leadership, they were just rock stars. Every single individual you came in contact with, it was, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, that kind of thing. And they were just rock stars. And I was literally going up an elevator with one of them, and I was just talking to him, just a super guy. I was just talking to him. And I said, how long have you been here? And, he's like, man, I've been here for like 1.5 years, 2 years. Started talking about where he's from, and entree leadership, they're in Nashville. And he was from Austin, Texas. And I was like, why did you come all the way from Austin, Texas to entree leadership? And he goes, this is where I want to work. I wanted to work here forever. And I'm like, wow, what a concept. And so what that entree leadership has done is created that magnetic brand, has created that magnetic business. And the reason, like you said, you can easily see why Dave Ramsey EntreLeadership does what they do.
Yeah.
You can easily say what they stand for, their core values,
Right.
and where they're going. And that draws in two things: the team members, like I just gave that story, but also that ideal client or that ideal patient. Who are you wanting to try to go out and make the biggest impact on? And what does that ideal client look like? And then the messaging to it is you message to that ideal patient, that ideal client in any business. Right. And you speak directly to them. Don't confuse and try to market or message to everybody. You got to dial in that messaging to speak right to that client, team member as well, but that client, so that you can bring them in. That's that magnetic. You're attracting that client that you're trying to get.
I think that's exactly right. And that's where you look at a Dave Ramsey. His personality is not for everybody. So guess what? Just as it will draw in the right people, it's going to repulse the wrong people. And as a human being, we are wired to seek approval of the tribe of, we don't want to be the outcast, so it's really hard for us to not want to be vanilla and to really want to be everything to everybody. But I think the people who really have this dialed in, they understand you can't be. And there's going to be some people who are going to look at what you do and they're either going to scoff or laugh or blow it off or say that's nonsense or that guy's a goofball or whatever. It doesn't matter. This is what Seth Godin teaches, and I love it. It's not for you, and that's okay. We can still be friends. It's not for you. That's a hard concept to learn. But once you learn that and you get okay with the fact that not everybody's going to want what you sell, not everybody's going to give you kudos and give you praise for what you do, but what you realize is it doesn't take that many of the right people to create this fierce sense of loyalty that you can pour into and see what happens. What you'll find is that you'll organically kind of build out that tribe of ideal team members and ideal patients. That's the kind of stuff that leads to job satisfaction, just like we said, Jared. I mean, this is something this is probably one of the hardest concepts to really internalize and believe. And we wouldn't have believed it probably 5 years ago or less. I believe it now. It works, but this one takes a lot of discipline and it takes a thick skin. But if you can do it, then I tell you, you'll certainly experience a lot more joy, I think, and a lot more satisfaction with what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive deep on this specific principle, let's say. But I'll say two more things I think you have to have in order to do this, to step out and create this, is vulnerability. Yeah, so I think you have to be very vulnerable as a business owner, as a leader, but then also you have to have that abundance mindset. You can't have a scarcity mindset, because it's so easy to have that scarcity mindset, be like, oh, I can't do that, because you can't. You got to be vulnerable and have an abundance mindset. And again, going back to the team members and patients, clients you want to attract, got to put yourself out there and do that. And you do that through your messaging and your brand.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Where are we at? 6, 7. Number 7. This one's been really impactful for us, especially the past couple of years. We've really dialed this one in. And where I'm going is strategic planning.
Yeah.
And you guys might think like high level, okay, strategic planning. What is that? What do you mean? So I'll get pretty granular here. I'll tell you what we do in our business, and then we can kind of elaborate. But what we do, and we just did it in our business, we did it a couple of weeks ago, early November, I guess, is we bring in a third party. We used to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
It used to be you and I, right?
Yeah.
We'd set aside some time, not as much as we needed, but we would do it ourselves. But now we recommend third party, bring them in. We use a consulting group specific to CPA firms. We use Boomer Consulting. Awesome. John Hubbard, Gary Boomer, those guys are just amazing at what they do. They come into our company and we set aside an entire day with our entire team. And we go over all kinds of information to a degree, but the output, the end result of that full day strategic planning is literally a 1-page, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that is broken down between 5 categories and 4 categories, I'm sorry. And in each category, we have what's called initiatives. And those initiatives are, I think, Bill, we have 18 maybe for next
Yeah.
year, give or take. We have 18 initiatives, better known as things we want to try to accomplish, goals we want to try to accomplish for 2021. And the cool thing is that's the roadmap. That's the plan,
Yeah.
right? The vision we talked about, point A to point B. This plan, the strategic plan, is going to help us in 2021 get closer to point B, that goal. And the cool thing is, if we hit, I don't know what Hubbard says, 80% maybe of these, we don't have
Yeah.
to hit them all. Nobody's perfect. But if we hit 80% of these, we're going to knock out, what is that, 14 or so of those initiatives? You realize how far we're going
Yeah.
along the way. And before that, I'm going to say before Duck It Lad, I don't think we really ever did strategic planning to a degree. And then when you and I first started 5.5 years ago, we didn't do it as a whole team. We did it, you and I, and maybe took a couple hours and we came out with some initiatives, but we never really accomplished them. But that's just the cool thing is we know right now, November of 2020, what we want to accomplish in 2021. And that's just so dynamic for us. I mean, it's going to allow us to achieve so much.
So, I look back to our previous company. No, we really didn't. We had partner meetings and things, and they were good, but there really was no forward thinking. We did try it ourselves, and I'm going to say we weren't terrible. I mean, I think we were probably more qualified than most to kind of try to walk through those exercises, but I think it lacked a lot of teeth, and I think it really, what it lacked was accountability too. So I think it really opened our eyes that, the group you mentioned, Boomer, one of the first things, really the first engagement they did for us was to do a visioning exercise to help us identify our vision. And I think it became pretty clear that that vision from point A to point B is only so good as your execution. And if not, you just have a sheet of paper. And that's where I think a lot of businesses get off track, is they come up with a great vision, but they have no idea how to get there. So strategic planning brought in by a facilitated industry expert that actually gives a damn about your company, which is what we're lucky to have. It made all the difference in the world. And, 5-10 years ago, we would have looked at the cost and say, there's no way. I mean, we can do this ourselves. But the ROI on something like that is humongous. I mean, a perfect example, Jared, we had a we had a all hands strategic plan last November about this time. We had great goals, right? And we were working towards those goals. We are a traction-based business, which, we've implemented or integrated our strategic plan into our traction goals, which really works well for us. But man, we were rocking and rolling with that strategic plan. And then guess what happened? COVID, everything changed. And guess what? Our strategic plan, a lot of it changed too. But what we could do is really dial in on the things that were the most important, impactful. And we may not hit 80%, but by God, we're going to hit the 50% that are going to move the needle and keep us in the game. And I think it gave us that clarity, that point of focus, the ability for us to run it by our facilitator to kind of get his opinion and thoughts. And, when all the COVID mess happened, we kind of put our this year's strategic planning on hold, just kind of as a cost cutting measure, not knowing what would happen. The minute, we kind of started to see light at the tunnel, that's the first call we made, is to get that back on the schedule. We need it. We need to have somebody kind of give us that outside perspective. And I'm excited. I see our 2021 roadmap is exciting. And I think the team is excited in that as well.
Yeah, the team's excited as well. You're exactly right. And you said it perfectly, is that coming up with a plan is step one. Setting aside the time to come up with a plan. What are the initiatives you want to try to incorporate next year? Crush. But more important is delivering on that and having some sort of system of accountability to hold you to that. It's easy to come up with a plan. It's even harder to actually hit the plan. So like with our third party consultant, like John Hubbard and Boomer, is, quarterly accountability calls. They're following up with us. Like, how are you guys doing? And us, I mean, we're competitive guys, right? We want to make sure we're on the plan. We don't want to show up to a phone call and be like, oh, well, we got busy. We forgot what we're trying to do. Actually, what is it we're trying to do? We want that accountability that people are pushing us. So if you're thinking out there right now in your business, you're thinking, yeah, I sit down every year. Maybe you're a one doctor practice and you're like, yeah, I sit down just myself and I scratch down my goals I want to try to accomplish. Majority of people do that. But the big thing there, that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's great. Setting those goals for your business, but take it a step further. Take those goals to your team, get them involved, and then have team-wide goals, initiatives you want to try to accomplish, and set a process or something in place to provide accountability so that the whole team is accountable to everything. And you can delegate to team members, etc. That's the cool thing. It's not all on you, the owner.
Right.
We're all in this together. But if you're not doing all those things, it sounds like a lot. Once you do, and once you go a full year doing that, and looking back and be like, yeah, we did this, we did this, we did this.
That's right.
And I guarantee if you're crossing those things off, you can look back and be like, yeah, I see the impact of that initiative. That made us better in this section. And you're going to feel that in your business. And again, it's going to snowball on it. Set them again for next year and keep going.
I think that's one of the biggest things we hear from people is they probably don't feel that their practice is big enough to do this. And the cost might be prohibitive. It might be, or you might be in a good spot where you're comfortable and you got it dialed in, you feel good. Most of the people we work with, they don't feel, they do feel like there's ways they can improve and get better and build a practice that maybe gets them away from the chair a little bit more, and allows them to have different kinds of production. There's all kinds of initiatives and things that with a little, facilitation, a little detailed focus, initiatives can be created. And again, then it comes down to accountability, which, again, we use traction as our model of accountability. But once you have your vision and you have your strategic plan, you have your initiatives, if you're holding people accountable to those goals and those things that you set, then I think you'll see that you can really move the needle and start building out something special. If you have a vision with no strategic plan or no strategic way to get it done, it's going to suffer. If you have a strategic plan with no system of accountability to make sure those things are getting done, it's going to suffer as well. And that's when you start getting frustrated. So, it's a process. This is probably one of the more time-intensive, difficult ones to do. Just to be honest, because this is something that it's not just the upfront time, it's the ongoing maintenance of the plan and the oversight that a lot of times we'll see people will fall off. That's again why we love our coach calling us quarterly and saying, are we on track, and holding us accountable. And, it gets us excited and ready to hit those objectives and keep pushing forward.
Yeah. This is, Gerber in his book, Working on the Business as opposed to in the business. This is what he's talking about. This is working on the business. Strategic planning is huge, guys. If you're not doing that, think about, you don't have to do it all overnight, slowly implement it. But at least start putting a plan in place. Okay. Number 8, know your numbers. And we're going to kind of tell on ourselves maybe just a little bit. And you're probably thinking, well, Jared, you're talking about things you implemented once you started Duckett Lad. Maybe the question you're going to ask is, did you not know your numbers before you started Duckett Lad? And yeah, we knew our numbers, right? We looked at financial statements. We're accountants. We track, profit and loss statements, the balance sheet and everything. But I guess to elaborate a little further on know your numbers, what we're talking about here is not just 30,000 foot view of what your profit and loss statement looks like, but diving a little deeper into your business on KPIs, what key performance indicators you need to track.
Yep.
And look at, because those are the leading indicators, if you will, that drives the results. Don't look at just the results, look at what's driving those results.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, you have to monitor them. Again, I'm going to go back to the plane analogy from traction I use all the time. The airplane taking off does not just check his gauges once before he gets from Missouri to New York City. Checks them all the time to make sure they stay on track. So know your numbers. What I'm talking about here is diving deep and then monitor them. We monitor them weekly. Again, we're a traction-based company. We've got our scorecard. It's got the 5 to 15 metrics we want to monitor on a weekly basis. And every single week in our L10, boom, scorecard. It's the second thing we do, because If our scorecard's off, again, playing checking the gauges, course correct. You got to fix those because those are the leading indicators that are going to get that output.
Yeah, I think this is, you're right. This is admission time, right? This is confession. Just like you didn't learn the business of dentistry in dental school, we didn't learn the business of an accounting firm in our accountancy program. So what do? We kind of evolve into what 90% of the people do, which is, we had an office administrator. She would whip out some financial statements. The partner group would kind of get in it. Why is supplies up here or there? They usually come about a month and a half late. I mean, there was no really interaction with the numbers beyond say, yeah, we feel we're doing okay, and I think that sense of complacency is what leads to this. Most dentists are doing okay. Most accountants are doing okay. And that's good enough for them. And for a long time, shame to admit, it was kind of good enough for us too. When we started our own business, it kind of was just, aha, silly us moment where we're like, good grief, what are these numbers even telling us? And once we really started truly understanding the dynamics of accounting firm, we knew what levers you could pull, what drivers, like you mentioned, we need to be focusing on. How do we assign metrics to our people to make sure they're not just doing what they're supposed to through their key result areas and core values, but they're also achieving goals that are going to make us more profitable as a firm. Once we kind of dial that in for ourselves, it's kind of like putting the air mask on yourself first. And then we said, well, what's that same thing in a dentist office? And we started trying to pour into that. And that's one of our ultimate objectives when we deal with dentists is we don't want to be the hero that slides in and just solves all the problems. We want to teach people the business of dentistry so they understand. And this is something, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, you can always learn more about the business and what it's telling you. If you don't have a good system of tracking, if you don't have a good system of metrics, it's going to be tougher. It's just going to be tougher for you to hit those profitability metrics. It's going to be tougher for you to hold people accountable to goals and objectives. If you don't know what those are, people aren't going to buy into them. So this is one of those things that it sounds super easy. I think people misunderstand exactly what this means. But when you know this, we've seen it, Jared, numbers can tell a story. And it's funny how often we come into a practice, we can look at a P&L and pretty quickly pinpoint what their frustration and pain points are. I mean, how many times do we see that?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. And one of the huge benefits of knowing your numbers is if you don't, okay, if I'm talking to a dentist and I'm talking about their practice and they're like, Jared, my books are behind. I really don't know where I'm at. They're 3-4 months behind. But I know I need another team member, or I know I need to go buy a piece of equipment or I know I got to build out another operatory. And my question is, well, how do you know? And if you don't know your numbers, really the only way you know, I would say, is gut. You feel like you need more team members. You feel like you need another operatory because you're swamped. But if you know your numbers, make decisions based on the numbers. Don't make gut decisions. Yes, sometimes you're going to make a gut decision, but the numbers need to back you up to a degree. So this one has been, and the cool thing is, and I won't elaborate too far, but we show our team. Not only does the owners need to know their numbers, we show the team our numbers. Again, we have KRAs for each team member. They need to know what winning looks like in their seat. So when I say most of the time, sometimes it revolves around numbers. And we need to put those numbers in there to see, they need to know how we're doing. Not just the owner, but the team as well.
It's interesting. This is again how everything kind of ties back in. We start talking about vision back number 3, right?
Yeah.
3 or 4. So you've got your vision. Typically, that's where you're going. A lot of times you'll see there's some quantification to that. In 3 years, we want to be X. Okay, so now you got your strategic plan that says over the next year, broken down into quarters, I need to do this. Well, you take those numbers and maybe you're starting to split those up even further, kind of cutting off more of the apple or whatever you want to say. And all of a sudden you start creating these metrics and these goals that are quantifiable, right? I mean, and this is all kind of part of building your numbers, and you're almost, this is what I love, Jerry, is you're almost reverse engineering back to your desired result and creating goals that are in line with that. And when you can do that and see it and hold people accountable to that with the right team members, you're going to see those numbers start clicking off. And it's amazing how your profitability starts falling in line. It's amazing. You'll just see it. You'll just see it happen. And that's what we've seen. We've seen a lot of practices with just a little bit of intentionality in this area. Again, this is another one of those things. This takes boots on the ground, getting it right, or outsourcing it to make it right. But once you do, and once you get in that cadence of assessment and accountability towards goals, you're going to see some big changes in your practice, without a doubt.
Yeah, 100%. And so again, like Bill said, I mean, it takes a process. So if you don't have a process in place, start thinking about that process, outsource it, put something in place at your practice. But you've got to have some process in place to know your numbers on a weekly, at minimum, a monthly basis, to know where you're at in order to make decisions, show your team, get better, achieve your vision, all those things. All these concepts just kind of correlate back to itself. It's weird how that works, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. 2 more here. Number 9, mastermind groups. And before Ducket Lab, we really were involved. I'm trying to think in hardly any mastermind groups to a degree. And what we mean by mastermind groups are groups that you're a part of. It could be a number of organizations. So we're in like CPA specific mastermind groups. We work with dentists. We're in dental specific mastermind groups. It could be just broad business, just trying to get better mastermind groups. But the whole reasoning here, and Bill, we were kind of talking about this morning, and you said that, always don't always be the smartest person in the room. Get in rooms with people that are smarter to you, so that their, knowledge can just sink into you, and you get better in that regard. So elaborate on mastermind groups a little bit, Bill, kind of what we've done and how it's benefited.
If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I think Napoleon Hill came up, or not really came up with it, but really articulated it well, that kind of set off a craze for mastermind groups. And I mean, the whole thought process is exactly what you said, and our good friend David Phelps, and we'll talk about him in a second, actually wrote an article about this. I think it just came out this week, which is, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. We've all heard that comment, but man, we all love to be the smartest guy too, right? I mean, we all have a little bit of an ego. It's always fun to go in and solve the world's problems and be the hero on the white horse and have all the answers. That's fun to a degree, but that's only going to take you so far. You will be the ceiling. And what we found is if you want to talk about one thing that ties in with the growth mindset more than anything else, is getting in the right mastermind groups. They are going to force your worldview to a different level. They should. They're going to really challenge you. They're going to make you look at how you see the world and what you believe. And sometimes, you're going to have some pretty mind-altering revelations, and that's a good thing. It can be a good thing, and that's kind of what we saw. Like you said, we got into a mastermind group that was more of a business mastermind group. Then we got into a CPA specific one that was fantastic. For that point of our journey, we could not have asked for a better group to really expand our mind to what we could be. We've kind of evolved into another one in that area. In the dental space, we have just been blessed to be part of such great groups that come together, that actually care about each other, want to make each other better, maybe don't always agree, but still are constantly pushing each other to be better than what they were. This one is so important if you want to have that growth mindset, to be around people who push you in that regard. It can't be understated.
Yeah. And those mastermind groups, you talk about Dr. David Phelps. So with Freedom Founders, getting in those rooms and a part of that group, and others as well is just, I mean, sometimes you come in those meetings or whatever, it's just mind blowing. Some of the little gold nuggets. And the cool thing about it, just looking back at this list, typically, if you're in those rooms, you're part of a mastermind group, you're going to have that growth mindset. But then going to the first one we talked about today, number 6, that magnetic business, it's so weird once you get in those groups, those mastermind groups, it's not hard to talk to somebody. You know why? Because you're all in the same mindset. You're magnetic. Yep. You guys are, I mean, we're attracted to each other because we're trying to do the same things. We've got the same mindset. We've got the same goals. We're the same type, if that makes sense. And so it's just like a room of individuals that are smarter than you are. And the whole reasoning is to try to get something to make you better. Again, it's all about making better and diving deep, making relationships, and constantly pushing yourself to get better is how I would say those mastermind groups have been the biggest benefit for us.
You know, I think Dr. David Phelps is just a perfect example, exactly like you said. You know, he is an individual who sees the world a very specific way. And his messaging is so pinpoint. If you want to talk about somebody who just lives out that concept of creating a magnetic brand, you know, what he says is contrary to Dave Ramsey in a lot of ways.
Sure.
You know, and guess what? Not everybody's going to look at Dave's message, not everybody's going to look at Dr. Phelps' messages and buy in. And guess what? He's 100% okay. But to your point, the people who that does resonate with, and they do get into those rooms, they're going to find that one of the biggest benefits, a lot of times specifically to, you know, maybe some industry specifics or investment type groups, is those guys, you are not going to be the smartest guy in the room, and your learning curve time is going to be shredded, you know, from where it was to where it could be. That's one of the biggest benefits, is you're able to tie into these people who have been there, done that, learned every lesson under the sun, and they're going to help you stop, or they're going to help you from making some of those same mistakes. And they are happy to do it because guess what? They're paying it forward because somebody helped them. And that's the power of those mastermind groups. And you get in the right ones. And Jared, that's not to say sometimes you don't outgrow them. Sure. Sometimes the room is just not the right room anymore. Well, guess what? You know, you say your farewells, you wish everybody well, and you go find a room where you are pushed and stretched and you're not the smartest one. These are the kind of things that they take time. Most people, you know, don't feel like they have the time for them. But I promise you, if you carve out a little bit of time, this one a lot of times is not just working on your practice, but working on yourself as a human being as well. You're going to see that growth mindset, that magnetic practice, all that stuff starts to really crystallize in your head when you're around these kind of people who are going to, again, push you to try to see the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head. You just hit the nail on the head as to why join mastermind groups. It's literally to shorten that learning curve. You know, whatever you're trying to do, again, go back to your vision, whatever you want to try to accomplish, get in a mastermind group that teaches those principles, that share the same core beliefs. And then that's going to help you get there quicker by utilizing other individuals in the room that have been there, done that, can teach you. And then you're going to know that and acquire that knowledge and shorten that. You're exactly right, Bill. Spot on. All right. Number 10, the last one. And Bill, I'm going to have you unpack this a bit. But this is basically reinvent yourself and reinvent your company. So Bill, what does that mean? Reinvent yourself and reinvent your company.
I think this one's really a great one to end on, because this one's kind of those red pill, blue pill kind of deal, not to overstate it, but this one is probably one of the more abstract concepts we'll come up with. But so let me start with a very simple concept, which was a choice you and I had 5 years ago when we sat across the table from each other, you know, as we were kind of looking through a partnership split with our old group, saying, do we see the world the same way? You and I did. So then we started trying to figure out, well, what do we want? We know what we had. We don't want that again. What do we want? So you start trying to build out that future. And there was a lot of changes. And certainly, you know, we've kind of evolved over time. But, you know, as far as reinvention, the most impactful one for me was exactly what we've been talking about since number one, was that switch from a fixed mindset or a mindset of, man, I've done my time in school and I've learned my trade, and that's good enough for me, to I want to grow as a person, as a human being, as a husband, a father, a Christian, whatever you want to call it. I want to be better. That's like that reinvention of yourself. And that's got to happen first. If that doesn't happen, then nothing else will. Mm-hmm. I think that what we realized, one of the things we came up right off the bat, I was actually able to look back when we first started unpacking our initial core values that we wanted. And one that's been on there ever since day one is always move forward. Yep. In our minds, we did not want to be stagnant. We did not want to be a traditional accounting firm. We wanted to be an innovative accounting firm. And that was a focal point of us. And so what we realized is that to do so, a couple of things, a couple of ways you can put it is, number one is, as Dave Ramsey's team says, you have to shoot sacred cows. You can't fall in love with the prototype. And most importantly, a concept we've just learned recently, which we love, is sometimes you have to kill the company. And that doesn't mean shut the company down, liquid. I mean, what I'm saying is try to figure out, if you were coming into this marketplace and you wanted to crush, let's just say, Jared, you and I were going to form a CPA firm called Ladd and Duckett, and we wanted to crush Duckett Ladd.
Sure.
What would we do? This is a concept I think is so simple, but so cool, is what would we do differently? And so all of a sudden you can kind of flip your mind that it's okay to get out of the mindset of what we've always done. It's time to think through, what would we do differently? And this one really, the reason I think this is perfect for number 10 is this one has an eye on the future. Where are we going? Where is this profession going? Where's the profession of dentistry going? What are those things that are going to crush us, and how do we adapt? And are we confident? Do we have enough courage to maybe make some pretty bold changes to make sure that we're future ready and able to withstand whatever's coming? This is one that to me is super, it makes me anxious and nervous sometimes, but it's also super exciting. This is the one that I think is going to set Duckett Ladd up to be around for a long time.
Yeah, I'm going to use a silly example here, but I saw Jeff Bezos interview a couple of days ago. But think about Amazon, what he's been able to create in 20 plus years, I guess, of Amazon. What if, Amazon started as an online, where you bought books, right?
Yeah.
What if Jeff Bezos sat down and was like, man, I wish we could do this, this, and this, but we only sell books. Realize how different that company would look like today if they just stayed at selling books. Now, I say silly example because it doesn't pertain to every business. I'm not going to say you're going to switch your entire business model, but it's the whole premise of a mindset shift. And you have to think about, don't always, like you said, Dave Ramsey, don't shoot your sacred cows. You don't always have to just be the business you are. Think about how would you kill your company? What would you do different? And again, it takes vulnerability, but what are you going to put in place to constantly move forward? Because the companies that are just, I want to say, aren't open to change, or maybe don't live out our core value, always move forward, are kind of going to get, I'm going to say, stuck in a way, because the world just moves so fast.
Well, I think it comes down to one word, which is a buzzword, and I get it. And you guys may be sick of buzzwords by this point, but it's disruption.
Yeah.
What do people go after? They go after stagnant industries that are really slow to change. Guess what? That's accounting. We realize that. We've heard that over and over and over. That creates a sense of urgency for us. We've heard it with dentistry. We've seen people slide in. We've seen the Smile Direct clubs. We've seen these other ones come in and try to grab people's attention and grab that market share, because they don't think that this industry will, react quick enough. That is the kind of stuff that you need to be focused on. And you may be at the point of your career where you don't care, and that's fine. But in my opinion, I don't care if an accountant is 21 years old or 65 years old. We should be concerned about the state of our profession. And I think dentistry should be as well. We have a lot of things going right for us, but we also have some things that are stacked against us. And dentistry is exactly the same way. We just have to be willing to adapt, to evolve, to innovate, and to always try to, we call it, riding the wave of change as opposed to, kind of getting crushed by it.
Yeah.
I think it's something that dentists could really take a hard look at and try to find ways to hop on that wave and ride it into the shore as opposed to being crushed by it.
This is probably the toughest one, I would say, to a degree, and because it's hard to look at. Again, you have to be vulnerable. But I think that exercise, like you said, Bill, is you're going to create a practice across the street from yourself. Yeah. How would you kill your company? Meaning, what would you do in that new practice to put your current practice under? And I think that can start by having that always move forward, open to change, thinking towards the future mentality of how you're going to get, how you get better. So guys, that's the 10th one. And again, I'm just going to go over these real quick again, but these are the 10 things that we see in our firm we've done in the past 5 years that have had the best ROI, if you will, the biggest impact on our firm, and how you can do it in your practice as well. So number 1, growth mindset. Number 2, set a mission. Find your mission. Number 3, core values. Number 4, vision. Number 5, A+ team members. Number 6, creating that magnetic business and brand. Number 7, strategic planning. Number 8, know your numbers. Number 9, mastermind groups. And number 10, reinvent yourself and your company. Again, these are just 10. We could go on and on and on. We could talk all day on these, but I guess what I would say to everybody listening out there is go back and listen to the first episode, this episode as well. Jot all 10 of those down. And then maybe think about in your practice, what are some of those that you haven't even moved the needle on a bit? If you don't have a mission, go just start at the beginning. If you don't have a growth mindset, and kind of just walk your way up, write them all down on a piece of paper. And if you haven't started some of those, think about, man, are these guys, does that resonate with me? Does it make sense? Because we're not telling you have to do these. We're saying this has had the impact on us. So if it resonates and you're like, man, I think I can see the ROI out of doing that, start doing it. But then also reach out to us if you have questions, but reach out to somebody else in your industry that have done it as well. Again, shorten that learning curve to a degree, but start putting these in place. And again, our team members laugh all the time because I talk in analogies, but it's like the golf swing. Don't go out and try to do all 10 of them at once. All right. Don't work on all the aspects of your swing. Pick 1 or 2 and start working on that. Check that off and go from there. So any lasting words, ending words from you, Bill, here?
This has made all the difference for us. We can pinpoint these 10 and say, we believe these have made us the firm we are, and they're going to make us future ready. And not for everybody. I think there are bits and pieces that people could pull out, really focus on. Like you said, I'm excited, man. We're 5 years in. I'm excited to see what the next 5 years is. 5 years, we'll need to do another one of these and see if our 10 have changed. They may, with that number 10 being reinventing, we may have something different. But, you got to start somewhere. You got to look at your business a little differently and start really trying to keep an eye towards where you're wanting to go and what the future looks like. And I think these are the kind of things that are going to really make that future look a lot better, a lot rosier, and probably be a lot happier for you as well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And a lot of these, some of these could change. Maybe your vision changes a little bit. Maybe you add a core value or 2 or whatever we have in our business. So everything's constantly evolving in business. But guys, this is where we see 10 things. Again, I hope you got at least one gold nugget out of these 2 episodes. Reach out to us if you have any questions for us, any clarity we can provide on all these. But again, our whole mission, our why is to help our clients get better, our team members and clients get better. We hope something we said here today has made somebody else better out there. So Bill, I appreciate you, man. Words of wisdom always. And
you got it, buddy.
Yeah, we'll see you guys. Have a good week.